26 Haunted Small Town Secrets Revealed, Terrifying Tales of Sinister Entities and Cursed Places. Jenna could feel the weight of Maplewood's dark history pressing down on her as she stood in the middle of their new kitchen. Boxes surrounded her, but it was the whispers of the town that screamed loudest in her ears. The locals smiled too sweetly, their eyes glinting with secrets. Shadows danced just beyond the edges of her vision, and a chill swept through her spine. Something in this quaint little town wasn't quite right. As dusk crept in, Jenna's flashlight flickered ominously while she unpacked the last few boxes. That uneasy feeling in her gut began to spiral. The living room wall caught her eye, gleaming scratches twisted into bizarre shapes. In the warm sunshine, they were nearly imperceptible, but now, in the dimming light, they morphed into grotesque claw marks. Were they always there? Just her imagination? She shook her head, trying to dismiss the thought, but the memory of missing children rattled in her mind like a ghostly echo. When she took Lily for a walk, playtime laughter filled the air, but it was also laced with whispers, fragments of rumors that hovered like a fog. A group of mothers leaned together, fingers trembling as they spoke of Mr. Thompson, the janitor whose kindness was overshadowed by the late-night hours he kept. "You know, he used to work in that park." Where a sharp gasp, and then silence. Jenna felt a chill sweeping through her, gripping her heart like a vice. What were they afraid of? One evening, the whispers pulled her to the park, a charming place, filled with the eerie sound of swings creaking despite the stillness of the air. Jenna felt an unnatural cold wrap around her, as if she had crossed an invisible line into forbidden territory. And then she noticed them scratched out letters in the dirt beneath the swings, dark and angular, spelling out eerie words she couldn't understand. A feeling of dread washed over her, a tidal wave of instinct screaming for her to leave. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The town's facade cracked further as Jenna learned of a tragedy. A child who had once lived in her home, lost to the shadows of Maplewood. The locals spoke in hushed tones, telling tales of disappearances that had darkened the town forever. She felt her insides twist, as if the specter of this tragedy had woven itself into the very walls of their new home. Returning home from a long, uneasy day, Jenna sensed something was off. Every corner whispered the name of that lost child. The scratches were now more pronounced, creeping along the walls like a message, an ominous invitation. Her instincts screamed at her, shoving the burden of her daughter's safety to the forefront. On that stormy night, as rain lashed at the windows, Lily's frightened whisper sliced through the thick air. "Mommy, someone is trying to get in." Jenna's heart raced, and every pulse vibrated with the reality that she had unwittingly stumbled into this town's haunted narrative. Slipping into the hallway, flashlight trembling in her grasp, terror grasped her throat tightly. The scratches formed a ghastly face, shadows creeping closer, and with that realization, she understood Maplewood was alive. And it was watching. The battle for her daughter's future had only just begun, and they might already be too late. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the dark corners of the hallway. Jenna's breath hitched as she peered into the flickering shadows. "Mommy," Lily whimpered again, clinging to her leg, her tiny body trembling like a leaf in the wind. Jenna crouched down, eyes wide. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here." But deep down, she wasn't so sure. Something clawed at her mind, the echoes of the townsfolk's warnings looping like a broken record. As she scanned the hallway, her gaze flickered to the living room wall again. The scratches swirled ominously, pulsing like a heartbeat, almost as if they demanded her attention. Did they spell a warning? Or a curse? A loud thump jolted her back into reality. It came from the back door. The sound of wood splintering made her stomach drop. Adrenaline flooded her veins as she tightly gripped Lily's hand. "Stay close to me," she instructed, her voice barely more than a whisper. With shaky breaths, they edged toward the source of the noise. The door creaked on its hinges as Jenna pushed it slightly open, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. Rain poured down like a cascade of tears outside, the wind howling mournfully, carrying the hushed voices of the town that felt eager to share their terror. Mommy, Lily's voice wavered. Jenna shot her a sharp look, willing her to be silent. They stepped out onto the porch, the beam from the flashlight cutting through the black air. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. A figure stood just beyond the tree line, shrouded in darkness. The eyes glimmered, reflecting light like shards of glass. "Help me," the voice drifted out, soft yet desperate. It carried the weight of sorrow, an invitation wrapped in fear. A child's voice. Jenna's heart raced, pounding against her ribs. Was this the lost child? An urge to move gripped her, but instinct forced her back. "Lily, we need to go inside," she whispered fiercely, pulling her daughter closer. But Lily didn't budge. The child's gaze was fixated on the figure, a peculiar mixture of curiosity and terror playing on her innocent features. With every passing second, the air thickened, an oppressive weight pressing against them. The figure inched forward, darkness swirling around it. Claw marks on Jenna's skin almost thrummed in response, as if recognizing the face that was contorted in the shadows, stretching into a grotesque grin. "Mommy, I want to help," Lily persisted, her small voice almost drowning in the storm's fury. Jenna's stomach twisted with dread. "No. You can't." She pulled Lily back, fear mingling with an inescapable sense of danger clawing at her insides. But it didn't matter, the child had already taken a step forward, pulled by an unseen force, panic surged, and Jenna launched herself after Lily just as the figure bolted into the woods, its laughter echoing, cold and cruel. The sound slashed through the storm, cutting deep into her heart, leaving a chill that enveloped her entire being. "Lily, please!" Jenna screamed as she reached for her daughter, but the wind howled louder, drowning out her voice. In that fleeting moment, the figure vanished. Lily gasped, eyes wide with innocence, staring into the trees, mouth agape as if she had seen something both wondrous and sinister. Jenna's pulse raced. "What did you see?" she pressed, panic laced within her words. But before Lily could answer, the house behind them creaked ominously, the lights flickering off completely, plunging them into darkness. In the depths of the silence that followed, Jenna felt the unmistakable sensation of eyes watching from within the shadows, biding their time. What more was Maplewood hiding? As a soft whisper floated on the wind, pooling in her ears like oil, she realized they were not alone. And deep down, she knew something more awaited them in the creeping darkness of the woods. The night was far from over. Jenna's breath hitched in her throat, the darkness enveloping them like a thick blanket that smothered any flicker of hope. The flashlight trembled in her grip, casting long, erratic beams that danced with shadows, each flicker seeming to tease the edges of fear lurking just outside their reach. The pouring rain turned into a cacophony of noise, masking any sound of what lay beyond the tree line. "Mommy," Lily whimpered, her voice barely audible over the storm, sending a jolt of panic racing through Jenna's veins. She glanced down at her daughter, who trembled against her like a marionette without strings. "Should," Jenna whispered, desperately trying to soothe them both. But how could she? Insurmountable dread clawed at her, urging her to look back into the dark, into where the figure had vanished. "Is it gone?" Lily asked, wide eyes glimmering with fear, catching the flashlight's beam. A thunderclap answered her, shaking the ground beneath them. Jenna instinctively tightened her grip on Lily, pulling her closer as they ventured further into the night. Suddenly, a soft giggle rippled through the air, laced with a child's voice, but different, twisted. It pierced through the rain like a knife, sending icy tendrils of terror down Jenna's spine. "Help me," it echoed again, but this time the plea felt mocking. "The wind, it's just the wind," Jenna murmured, even though her own voice betrayed her, quavering in the oppressive dampness. Yet, in her heart, she knew it was more than the wind. It was an invitation, a cruel lure that they could not ignore. Lily's grip on her hand slackened. Mommy, it wants to play. Let us go find it. The innocence in her voice twisted deep within Jenna's chest. How could she explain that the laughter was the brink of danger? I said no. Jenna hissed, a tremor of desperation escaping. Her instincts screamed at her to retreat, to shield her child from whatever horror awaited them. They needed to go inside, to barricade themselves against the night. Just then, another thud echoed, louder this time, seemingly echoing from the depths of the woods. Jenna's heart stopped. It sounded close, too close. She could almost feel the breath of something lurking there, waiting for its moment. Lily, she began, but her words faltered. A bush nearby rustled, and Jenna froze, her heart hammering against her ribcage. Every fiber of her being screamed to flee, but she forced herself to look. The darkness writhed like a living thing. From the shadows emerged another figure, one that was smaller, hunched, with a matted hair that dripped with rain. It peered at them, eyes glistening with an unholy light. "Help me, I'm lost," it whined, voice twisted yet all too familiar, sending a rush of bile to Jenna's throat. "Stay back!" Jenna shouted, instinctively using her body to shield Lily. But her daughter stepped forward, entranced, the haunting call pulling her closer to the shadow. "Lily, no!" Jenna lunged forward, panic igniting a flame deep within her. She barely caught her daughter's wrist as Lily would crossed into the darkness, the rumbling voice drawing her in like the siren's song, but in that split second, the lights in the house flickered back on, revealing the horror before them. The scratches on the walls in the living room did more than warn. They had taken form, shaping into a nightmarish tableau. Faces emerged, contorted in agony, crude images of grief that clawed and scraped toward them. "Run!" Jenna screamed, yanking Lily back as the underlying evil surrounded them, a palpable pressure that threatened to swallow them whole. As they fled toward the house, someone laughed, a harsh, serrated sound that echoed cruelly against the storm's rage. Jenna's blood turned to ice as she stumbled back into the kitchen, locking the door behind her, heart racing, but as Jenna turned to the living room, something shifted in the air. The scratches pulsed again, and the faces seemed to scream now, begging for release. "What did you see back there?" Jenna demanded of Lily, her voice taut with fear. I don't remember," Lily stuttered, eyes frantic. "But they wanted me to come." The lights flickered again, plunging the house into shadow, and suddenly the air grew still, too still. Just when Jenna thought she might breathe, a soft, unearthly whisper slithered through the room. "Join us." Jenna stood frozen, terror gripping her like an iron vice. What had they just awakened? And could they escape this time? The night was only beginning to unravel its sinister secrets. Jenna's heart raced as the whispered invitation lingered in the air, curling around her like smoke, suffocating and insidious. She pressed her back against the cold kitchen wall, adrenaline pumping through her veins, making her feel alive yet utterly powerless. The shadows around her twisted, and she couldn't shake the feeling that countless eyes were watching, waiting. "Mommy," Lily whimpered, her small body trembling against her. The innocence of her daughter's voice was a stark contrast to the terror cascading through the house. Jenna swept her eyes across the kitchen, desperately searching for something, anything, to act as a shield against the growing malevolence. "Stay close," Jenna whispered, her voice strained, and she pulled Lily even tighter against her. "We need to get out of here. We need to find Dad." But even as she spoke the words, doubt gnawed at her. What if they weren't safe anywhere? Another flicker of light, and the faces on the wall twisted with horrific anguish. The ephemeral images seemed to smile at Jenna, an invitation to join their despair. She pressed her hands over her ears, trying to drown out their silent screams. "No. Not now." She shouted into the void, desperation clawing at her throat. "Mommy, they want to help," Lily insisted, her eyes wide and glimmering with an understanding Jenna couldn't comprehend. "They're sad. We should help them." Jenna shook her head violently. "No. They're wrong. Those aren't real." But as she turned her gaze back to the wall, a horrific thought struck her. What if they had once been alive, trapped in twisted forms of torment? Before she could voice her fears, something scratched against the window, like nails dragging across glass. Jenna's breath hitched again, the blood draining from her face. "Stay here," she hissed, using her body as a barrier between Lily and the sound. The scratching intensified, accompanied by soft, melodic hums, a twisted lullaby that wrapped around her mind. She fought the urge to look as every instinct urged her to flee, but curiosity gnawed at the edges of her reason. With a trembling hand, she turned toward the window. As she approached, a pair of eyes emerged through the slick rain-soaked glass, dark, empty, and filled with unspeakable sorrow. "Help us," they chanted, the voices merging into a haunting chorus that seeped through the cracks in her resolve. A shudder ran through Jenna. "No. I want tea," she shouted, her voice echoing against the wall. But the pull was strong, like a current dragging her into the depths of despair. Jenna felt herself teetering on the brink, caught between the reality she knew and the nightmare beckoning her closer. "Mommy!" Lily cried, dragging Jenna back to the moment. Panic raced through Jenna as she turned to her daughter, who stood transfixed, eyes wide in fascination and fear. "We have to hide, sweetie. We have to find your dad and get out." But as they turned to flee, the door behind them rattled violently, splintering wood echoing in the small space. Footfalls began to drum against the floor, heavy and relentless, shaking the very foundations of the house. Shadows slithered closer, monstrous shapes forming just out of reach. Jenna's breath came in quick gasps, and she gripped Lily's hand tightly. "We can't go that way," she realized, her mind racing for options. A growing whisper began to resonate through the walls, a cacophony of dissonant laughter that seemed to echo the promise of something sinister. Just then, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. Jenna felt the walls close in, the unseen entities wrapping around them like a serpent squeezing tighter and tighter. "We need to move. Now!" she shouted, urgency clawing at her throat. With fear driving her instincts, Jenna pulled Lily toward the back of the house. As they stumbled into the pitch-black hallway, a figure emerged ahead, blocking their escape, eyes like burning coals. Jenna's mind screamed that there was no way out, the shadows now swirling around them in a dance of malevolence. "Join us," it whispered, reaching out with long, thin fingers. Jenna stood frozen, torn between terror and the desperate urge to protect Lily. This was no mere shelter anymore, it had become a prison of nightmares. The walls themselves were alive, and this nightmare had only just begun. What would they have to sacrifice to escape the house that seemed to feed off fear? Jenna's breath was shallow, her lungs tightening with every second that passed. The shadowy figure lingered, its malevolence washing over her like a cold wave, paralyzing her thoughts. She could hardly process the sight in front of her, the suffocating darkness pulsating around them. "Mommy! What is that?" Lily whimpered, breaking the spell of terror that held Jenna captive. The innocence in her voice ignited a fierce instinct within Jenna. The urge to flee clashed with the grip of fear pressing against her chest. "Run!" The word jolted out of her mouth. Jenna yanked Lily's hand, sprinting past the specter. It didn't pursue them, at least not immediately. They barreled into the kitchen, where the oppressive atmosphere seemed thicker, past memories seeping into the dim light like a bitter fog. As they dashed towards the back door, a sudden crash echoed from the hallway behind them, shaking the very bones of the house. "We can't go that way," Jenna gasped, her heart racing as a scream rose in her throat. She spun on her heel, leading Lily toward the basement door. "Down here." She yanked it open and descended the rickety stairs, dragging Lily by her side. The musty air clung to them like a wet blanket, dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were damp, oozing shadows that twisted and turned, as if alive with secrets and pain. "Mommy, I'm scared." Lily's voice trembled, fighting back tears as Jenna crouched down to her level, forcing a reassuring smile that felt painfully false. "We'll be safe here. Just hold on to me." Jenna's hands were slick with sweat, an illusion of security fading in the gloom as she clutched her daughter. In the heart of that basement, the silence grew oppressive, the only sound was the pounding of their hearts reverberating in the tight space. Then, a soft whisper rose, echoing from every corner of the room. "Help us, join us." The plea was chilling, weaving through the darkness. It felt intimate, as if the house itself was asking her to surrender. Jenna pressed her palms against her ears, squeezing her eyes shut. "No. We want to join you." Her frantic denial felt like a futile breath against angry winds. Moments stretched into an eternity that clawed at her sanity. The whispers shifted, morphing into guttural growls, mocking her defiance. Lily's grip tightened around Jenna's arm, her fingers cold and quaking. "Mommy, I don't like this." Jenna opened her eyes, roaming wildly, searching for an escape, a glimmer of hope, but there was none. The darkness seemed to throb, pulsating like a living entity, pushing back against them. "We have to find another way out." Gritting her teeth, Jenna scanned the basement for an alternative escape. In the corner, half hidden by shadows, a narrow window beckoned a possibility. The glass was shattered, the jagged pieces gleaming like teeth ready to bite. "Come on, Lily." Jenna pulled her toward it. As they crawled toward the window, the whispers escalated into a roar. Leave us, they cried, a chorus of anguish that sent chills through Jenna's spine. Ignoring the voices, she hoisted Lily up, fear driving her as she pushed the child through the small opening. When Lily slid through, Jenna followed close behind but felt the sharp edge of glass catch her arm, biting into her skin. She bit back a scream, forced through the pain, and tumbled onto the wet ground outside. Just as she started to push herself up, dark shapes filled the window, monstrous faces twisting in agony. The voices now screamed in unison, angry and desperate. "Join us." Jenna staggered back, pulling Lily to her side as they stumbled away from the house. Breathless and panting, Jenna glanced back, dread pooling in her stomach as those sorrowful, empty eyes stared back at her from within the broken window. Then, like a clap of thunder, the house trembled. The earth beneath them shook, and the front door flew open, revealing the figure once again, a grotesque silhouette silhouetted against the whirling darkness within. It stepped forward, fingertips brushing against the threshold, as Jenna felt her pulse quicken. They weren't free yet. This wasn't over. "Mommy, what do we do?" Lily's voice quivered, pulling Jenna back to the present. "We run wherever that takes us." They turned to face the dark woods that loomed beyond, the palms of Jenna's hands clammy with fear and hope. As they ran, a sinister question crawled into her mind: what if they weren't the first to try and escape? The forest was thick with shadows. What lurked inside, hoping to claim them? Branches clawed at their skin as Jenna and Lily plunged deeper into the woods. The trees towered like sentinels, their gnarled limbs twisted and bent, as if warning them to turn back. The ground was uneven, roots snaking out to trip them, but Jenna kept running, urgency propelling her forward. "Mommy! I can't see!" Lily cried, stumbling behind her. Jenna turned briefly, the child's fear pulling at her heart. She knelt, grasping Lily's shoulders, searching her daughter's eyes for courage. "Just stay close to me," she whispered, a reassurance both for Lily and herself. They resumed their flight, the air growing heavier, thick with an unseen presence that hovered just beyond their perception. A low growl rumbled from the depths of the trees, an echo of something malign that sent shivers racing down Jenna's spine. The whispers had ceased, replaced by a quiet that felt predatory, a predator stalking them just out of sight. Each crunch of twigs beneath their feet felt like a gate slamming shut behind them. Suddenly, Lily stopped. "Mommy, my foot." She lifted her shoe to reveal a thick, dark substance oozing from a thorn that had pierced through. Panic surged through Jenna as she knelt again, her fingers trembling as she pulled the thorn free with a wince. "We have to keep moving," she urged, though Lily's eye was wide and filled with worry, but Jenna sensed it, something else lurking, something watching. Without thinking, she lifted Lily into her arms. "Hold on tight." As they resumed their flight, shadows twisted and stretched around them, playing tricks on Jenna's mind. It felt as though the woods themselves shifted in response to their hurried steps. Every rustle in the bushes sent her pulse racing, a dreadful anticipation building in her chest. What if they weren't alone? The shadows grew denser, each tree a twisted visage in the dark, a mockery of their plight. As the trees thinned into a clearing, Jenna paused to catch her breath. A jagged rock formation loomed ahead, its sharp edges framing an unnatural stillness that held her hostage. Mommy Lily's voice trembled, a reminder of the horror waiting in that house behind them. "Stay here." Jenna set Lily down, her instincts screaming for caution as she edged closer to the rock formation, investigating the dark crevices between the stones. Faint markings, smudged and ancient, clawed at the surface. She stepped back, a chill creeping down her spine. The carvings looked like faces twisted in agony, their mouths frozen in sounds that echoed in her mind. "Help us, join us," the same haunting voice from the basement, now seeping from between the stones, wrapping around her neck like a noose. Jenna shivered, her heartbeat pounding in her ears as she turned back to Lily. But her daughter was no longer where she had left her. Panic washed over Jenna, her stomach knotting. "Lily!" she shouted, her voice cracking with urgency. Mommy Lily's voice came faintly from beyond the rocks, laced with confusion and terror. Jenna rushed toward the sound, squeezing through the narrow passage between the stones. When she emerged on the other side, her heart dropped. Lily stood at the edge of a dark pit, peering down into an abyss that pulsed with a foul light. "Mommy, look! I told you to stay close!" Jenna screeched, fear gripping her as she lunged forward. But Lily was entranced, her tiny body swaying as shadows danced around the pit, beckoning her closer. "Join us!" The voices grew louder, reverberating in the air like a siren's call. Jenna reached out, grabbing Lily's arm just before the child toppled into the darkness. "No! We're not going anywhere." The moment solidified as chilling cries erupted from the pit, shadows blurring into faces that twisted and wept. Jenna dragged Lily back, panic fueling her movements as the shadows fought against her grip, pulling at her very soul. "Mommy, let go!" Lily screamed, tugging in the opposite direction, terror filling her eyes. "Never!" Jenna's resolve cracked like ice, her grip tightening. But in that moment, she felt the pull, the seductive urge to join the dark multitude below, to find peace among the chaos. A scream tore from her throat. "Mommy!" Lily shouted again, yanking her back to reality as Jenna shook away the darkness clouding her mind. Heart racing, Jenna backed away from the pit, dragging Lily with her. The shadows seemed to hiss, a surge of rage rising from beneath. Their whispers turned to shrieks, echoing through the woods. They had to run. Just as they turned to flee, a sharp rustle in the trees halted Jenna's breath. Another figure emerged, face obscured by darkness, the malevolent being from the house. "Join us," it whispered, its voice chillingly familiar, twisting Jenna's gut as she clutched Lily tightly, a final question scratching at the edges of her mind. How many souls had it claimed before? How many others had tried to escape? In that moment, Jenna wasn't sure if they'd outrun the past or if it was finally catching up to them. Lily's fear was palpable, and as they turned, Jenna felt the landscape shift around them. The cool twilight air grew denser, taking on a suffocating weight. Every breath was a struggle, tinged with the smell of damp earth and something putrid, something long forgotten. "Mommy, what is it?" Lily whimpered, her small fingers digging into Jenna's arm like a vice as they moved backward from the pit. Each beat of Jenna's heart echoed in her ears, drowning out the world around them. She dared not look back, not yet. She could feel its presence behind them, waiting and watching. The figure in the darkness, the thing that had haunted their steps since the very beginning, was following. Its whispers swallowed the night, curling like smoke around her thoughts. Join us," the call was hauntingly sweet, a poison that tasted like honey on her tongue. She squeezed Lily closer, nearly stumbling as panic surged through her. "Just keep moving." Jenna's voice was filled with urgency as she dragged Lily along. They darted across the clearing toward a narrow path that led away from the rocks. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to escape, to get away from the pit and its monstrous temptations, but horror crept closer, slithering along the ground beneath them, creeping through the trees like a predatory beast. The shadows now danced more violently, thickening into shapes that formed and dissipated mere seconds later. Jenna stole a quick glance backward, dread pooling in her stomach as she saw the figure, half concealed by the trees, gliding silently toward them, like a wraith. "Mommy! It's here!" Lily's voice trembled, eyes wide as she pointed toward the dark form. Jenna felt the edges of her sanity slip as she saw it raise a hand, fingers elongated and sharp, beckoning. "Run! Now!" Jenna shouted, and with renewed energy, they sprinted down the path. Thunder roared above them, though no storm threatened. An unnatural wind whipped the leaves around, shrieking through the forest like a lost soul longing for escape. The path began to narrow, the trees closing in like a confining grip. Shadows flickered across the forest floor, and as they fled, Jenna felt a metallic clang echo in her chest, something dreadfully familiar. It was the sound of her own heartbeat, mingling with the erratic thump of Lily's breath against her shoulder. Then, without warning, the ground gave way beneath them. Jenna barely had time to react as they careened into a lower section of the woods, the earth sloping and giving way to what looked like another clearing but filled with dense fog. The air was thick and clammy. "Mommy, I can't see." Lily's voice broke through the disorientation, sending a fresh wave of fear surging through Jenna. "Where are we?" "Just hold on." Jenna strained, heart clenching as they stumbled into the murky haze. Shapes emerged slowly from the fog, and Jenna stifled a gasp. They were standing in front of what looked like an old cabin, its windows shattered, door ajar, inviting them in with an eerie glow that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. "Mommy, no!" Lily cried, but the darkness behind them pushed forward, whispering insistently, pulling at Jenna's heart. They were out of time. Had to make a choice: the cabin could be a sanctuary, or a trap. The shadows edged closer, pressing against her like a wall, a dismissive reminder of the horrors chasing them. "Please. We need to," but before she could finish, the shadows erupted around them, blocking their escape. "Join us," the voice rasped, now thick with malice, the very air vibrating with a promise soaked in darkness. In that moment, Jenna was frozen. The threshold to the cabin yawned, dark and swallowing. Fear clawed at her throat. They could either face the ghosts of the past, or become another lost story whispered in the woods. "Grab my hand!" Jenna shouted, her voice echoing in her own ears, pleading once more. The choice lay heavy and dark, like the shadows that clung to the air, waiting to see what they would do next. Would they fight or fall, into the very depths they sought to escape? The air was thick with tension as the shadows drew closer, an almost suffocating wall of darkness. Jenna could feel the cold breath of fear swirling around her, creeping up her spine and constricting her throat. She could almost taste it, metallic and bitter, like dread incarnate. "Mommy!" Lily's voice trembled, a small thread of sound trying to keep them tethered to reality. Jenna grasped her daughter's hand tighter, feeling the pulse beneath her skin, the warmth mixing with the icy chill of their surroundings. "Now!" With urgency propelling them, Jenna plowed through the murky fog toward the cabin's entrance. The door creaked open as they pushed against it, swinging on rusty hinges that screamed like tortured souls. Inside, the gloom wrapped around them, sheltering but foreboding, a paradox of safety and danger. They stumbled into the entryway, and Jenna flicked on her phone's flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness, revealing the dilapidated interior. Cobwebs hung like shrouds from the ceiling, and old furniture lay strewn about like the remnants of forgotten lives. Dust danced in the weakened light as though the very atmosphere mourned the decay. "Close the door!" Lily cried, her wide eyes darting around the room, panic threading through her voice. Jenna slammed the door behind them, locking it tight against the encroaching black. The whispers grew muffled, but they still lingered like smoke, curling at the edge of her consciousness, taunting and teasing. "Why did we come here, Mommy?" Lily's question was a raw edge of fear, slicing through Jenna's resolve. "I don't know, sweetheart." Jenna knew she had led them to this point, but the truth felt too heavy to bear. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. "We needed to get away from whatever was out there." They moved deeper into the cabin, exploring the suffocating silence that seemed alive, watching them with unseen eyes. Dust motes floated aimlessly in the flashlight beam, almost serene in their dance. But Jenna's mind spun with the knowledge of what lurked beyond the walls, each creak and groan of the wood around them echoing like ominous whispers. "Stay close," she instructed, tugging Lily along as she scanned the room. She noticed a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye, a shadow shifting, but when she turned, there was only an old, broken rocking chair swaying gently, as if it had just been abandoned by its occupant. Jenna swallowed hard, a knot of fear twisting in her stomach. The darkness seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the air thick with unspoken dread. Birds outside had hushed to an unsettling silence, leaving them in a furious, echoing stillness. "Look!" Lily's voice broke in a sharp whisper as she pointed to an old photograph hanging askew on the wall. The glass was cracked, but the faces within were clear, smiling residents of the town they'd left behind. But there was something wrong. Their eyes, they seemed to follow Jenna, glinting with an otherworldly shine that felt wrong. "Those people, they're from our town," Jenna said, unease creeping into her voice. "When did this cabin become an extension of their nightmare?" Lily's hand tightened around her wrist, pulling Jenna's attention back. "Mommy, what if they want us to join them?" The sound of whispers crashed back around them, the walls bending with voices that sounded painful and pleading. Join us, no." Jenna breathed sharply, shaking her head in defiance. "We're not going to join anyone." But as she said the words, a flash of movement drew her eyes to the door, something pressing against it, straining to get in. Jenna felt her heart drop, and panic surged. The shadows were not just outside anymore, they were inside, creeping through the cracks in her mind. "Stand back!" she shouted, pulling Lily behind her as she held the flashlight like a weapon. But the darkness surged forward, and in that moment, Jenna knew they were not just facing the shadows outside, they were confronting the very heart of fear itself. What awaited them in the cabin might reveal the darkest truths about the town. They would never escape. Would they uncover the sinister secrets that had chased them through the haunted woods? Or would the cabin consume them entirely? The door shuddered violently, rattling hard against its frame, as something outside pushed against it with an unnatural force. Jenna's grip tightened around the flashlight, her fingers trembling as she listened to the chaos erupting just beyond. The whispers grew louder, coiling like thick smoke around her thoughts, tugging at the edges of her sanity. "Mommy, I'm scared." Lily's voice cracked, a guttering candlelight fighting against the encroaching darkness. "Me too, baby," Jenna whispered, her heart racing as she turned back toward the room. "We need to find a way out." But even the words felt like a lie. They were trapped within these walls, and the cabin was reaching for them. The scratching resumed, a clawing sound that made her stomach churn. It was relentless, a reminder that whatever lay outside was determined to get in. Jenna turned her flashlight towards the door, but the weak beam struggled against the depths, revealing only shadows that danced mockingly. "Can we hide?" Lily suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, let us find somewhere safe." Jenna's pulse hammered in her ears like a war drum as she searched the room for a sanctuary, but every corner seemed filled with dread. The old rocking chair swayed without reason, and the eyes in the photograph seemed to penetrate deeper, as though they were judging her every move. They stumbled toward a tall, dark cupboard in the corner, a massive behemoth jutting out from the wall like a sentinel. It looked ancient and foreboding, its wood cracked and chipped. It was an unwelcome reminder of things left undisturbed, darkness wrapped tightly around it like a shroud. "Mommy?" Lily tugged at her arm, eyes wide and glistening with fear. "What if it sees us?" With a heavy heart, Jenna realized they had no choice. She flung open the cupboard door, revealing layers of dust and cobwebs. Inside, there were old quilts and heavy blankets, remnants of forgotten warmth. Quickly. In here. She motioned, ushering Lily into the cramped space. As they squeezed inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air tasted different, charged, like the stillness before a storm. The whispers morphed into a chorus, drawn to them like moths to a flame. It crawled over her skin, wrapping around her like a cold embrace, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Are they coming for us? Lily's voice quavered, clinging to the blanket like a lifeline. Jenna hushed, pressing a finger to her lips. She could feel her heart pounding in sync with the chaos outside. We're going to be okay. Just stay quiet. But the sounds outside morphed into screeches, unspeakable wails that clawed at Jenna's mind. It sounded like a multitude, desperate, hollow, and alive. Join us echoed louder than before, shaking the very bones of the cabin. Just then, a sudden crash exploded from the door. Jenna's breath caught in her throat as the cabinet trembled, dust raining down around them. The chaos outside surged in, the shadows seeping through the cracks. Stay still. She hissed, attempting to contain her rising horror. The door creaked, the wood splintering as if it were alive, straining against something unhallowed and sinister. Suddenly, a hand thrust through the doorframe, gnarled and claw-like, reaching for them. Jenna's heart dropped. She pressed Lily into the darkness of the cupboard, shielding her with her body. In a surge of instinct, Jenna grabbed a piece of glass from a broken frame leaning against the door, her eyes wild with the feral need to protect her daughter. Mommy! What are you doing? Lily's voice shook, tightening around Jenna's heart. I won't let it take you, Jenna replied, her voice a fierce whisper, raw with panic as she braced for the unknown. The shadows surged forward, and for a moment everything seemed suspended in an agonizing heartbeat. Jenna could hear her own breath, ragged and desperate, intertwined with the whispers that pleaded like a mournful melody. Join us, they sang, the doors suddenly crashing open. What lay beyond might be worse than death itself, and Jenna fought against despair, holding tight to the lantern of hope flickering in her heart. Would she muster the strength to face the darkness? Or would her courage falter in the face of something that threatened to unravel everything they once knew? Jenna's heart thundered, matching the chaos as the door crashed open, unleashing a torrent of darkness. The shadows poured into the cabin like a living tide, hungry and relentless. Jenna clung tightly to Lily, wrapping her arms around her small body, shielding her from the encroaching malevolence. Through the swirling darkness, she glimpsed the gnarled hand that had shattered the door, its fingers twisted and elongated, reaching desperately for them. The entity was not just a figment of their fears, it was hunger and pain incarnate, and they had stumbled too close to its edge. Mommy! I'm scared! Lily cried, her voice a potent reminder of the innocence Jenna was desperately trying to protect. Shoo! Don't say a word, Jenna hissed, pressing her finger to her lips as she clenched the shard of glass tight in her hand. The pale light from the flashlight flickered and dimmed, casting elongated shadows that danced on the wall, taunting them. Suddenly, another crash echoed as the entity crashed through the remnants of the door. It was inside. The shadows roared together, a cacophony of voices merging, forming a haunting chorus that sang, "Join us, get back." Jenna screamed, thrusting the glass shard into the shadow. For a moment, the entity recoiled, letting out a sound that rippled through her bones, an anguished wail that echoed off the walls, deepening the dread smothering her. In that brief window of opportunity, Jenna pushed Lily deeper into the cupboard. We need to find a way out, she urged, feeling the oppressive weight of darkness bearing down on them. Lily's small body trembled, but her eyes held a flicker of determination that sparked Jenna's resolve. With the entity momentarily stunned, she and Lily crawled from their hiding spot, darting towards the back of the cabin, desperate to escape. Jenna felt the spectral chill behind them, the shadows surging forward once again. Outside! We need to get outside! Jenna shouted, spotting a window toward the rear of the cabin. She rushed to it, glancing over her shoulder as the darkness gathered strength. The oppressive air felt heavy in her lungs, each gasp a struggle against the cloying dread. Mommy, it's coming! Lily's voice broke through, anchoring Jenna. She pushed the window open, splinters of wood biting into her palms as she shoved it aside. "We're almost there," Jenna urged, lifting Lily up before her, the child's feet scrambling for footing on the sill. But just as she was about to push her through, the roar of the entity grew deafening, the shadows extending toward them. "Join us!" they bellowed, a singular voice echoing through the cabin, drowning out their hope. Jenna looked at Lily, the determination shining in her eyes igniting a flame in her heart. "Jump! I'll catch you!" Jenna shouted. With a nod, Lily leaped, landing precariously outside, and Jenna felt the pulling grip of shadows clutching at her. In that moment, fear sharpened her instincts, and she hurled herself through the opening just as a shadow latched onto her ankle. The world blurred around her as she hit the ground, rolling and gasping for breath. The air felt different outside, free, crisp, though darkness clung to the trees, ominous and alive. Jenna scrambled up, pulling Lily into her arms, the two of them stumbling into the safety of the woods, but there was no safety. The specter burst through the window, crashing behind them, the darkness spilling out like a flood. She could see its eyes glaring through the shadows, burning with intent. "Join us!" it cried, desperation fueling its voice. "Run!" Jenna yelled, adrenaline surging as she took off deeper into the woods, heart racing. She could hear the undergrowth rustling behind them, echoing with the growls of the entity as it pursued. The whispers of those lost filled the night air, the chorus of souls overlapping, a cacophony that threatened to engulf them. They sprinted through the dense underbrush, the terrain uneven. Jenna stumbled, nearly falling, but she steadied herself, clutching Lily tightly. They had to find refuge. As they plunged deeper into the heart of the woods, Jenna's instincts kicked in. She remembered the stories of the town, legends of the hidden chapel said to guard against dark spirits. "We need to find the chapel," Jenna shouted, hope mingling with fear as they surged forward. The whispers grew chaotic, twisting around them as if the woods were alive with the remnants of forgotten souls, clawing at their sanity. Pain and sorrow echoed in their footsteps, trailing them as a constant reminder of the danger closing in. Suddenly, through the suffocating darkness, a dim light flickered ahead, a beacon beneath the towering trees. "There!" Jenna pointed, urgency seizing her as they rushed toward it. It was a small chapel, weathered by time, its steeple barely visible against the canopy. Jenna slammed through the doors, a sharp gasp escaping her lips as the light enveloped them, warding off the encroaching shadows. They froze, stepping inside the sanctuary. Here, time seemed to stand still. The whispers fell silent, their scraping voices replaced by an eerie stillness that crept beneath their skin. The air felt palpable, sacred even, but they were not entirely alone. Inside, remnants of candles flickered along the far wall, illuminating faces carved in the stone, watching with deep-set eyes filled with longing. As Jenna caught her breath, she turned to Lily, who clutched her tightly. "We made it," Jenna whispered, though she felt the lingering presence of darkness outside. But within the walls of the chapel, there was sanctuary. "I don't want to go back, Mommy," Lily's voice trembled slightly. "Neither do I," Jenna replied, cradling her daughter's face. This place wasn't just a refuge, it was an anchor, a prior stronghold against the terror haunted by Maplewood's dark history that invaded their lives. With each breath, Jenna felt a sense of grounding within the sacred space. She would protect Lily, she would fight to break free of the cycles that kept them tethered to fear. Outside, the shadows clawed at the door, their laughter returned, but now it was hollow and distant. Here, Jenna had a chance to face the past, to challenge the darkness and rewrite their story. "Together, we can fend them off," she promised Lily, steel forming in her resolve. "Promise?" Lily's eyes sparkled with a flicker of hope. "Promise." And with that vow, she felt the energy surge through the air around them, a reminder that even in the face of the deepest shadows, light could find a way. They stood there, united in courage, prepared to confront not just the darkness outside, but the echoes of pain that ran deep in the heart of Maplewood. The time for fleeing was over. This time, they would fight back. Jenna inhaled a steadying breath, clutching the flashlight in one hand and Lily's hand in the other as the shadows stirred outside. but now they faced it not as victims, but as warriors ready to reclaim their future. The battle against the sinister tales of Maplewood had just begun, and they would emerge stronger or not at all. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on more exclusive stories that unveil chilling secrets. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Let's see the comments section flooded with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see how this concludes. Your support makes a difference. Thank you for being here.